Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego. Today is February 25, a little after 4 p.m. The sun is still shining, about 65 degrees here, so it's pretty good. Feel sorry for people in the Northeast today, but I feel even worse for people in the Ukraine. And so let's hope everything can work out good. Our special guest today is Paul Falcone, who's a longtime CHRO, highly regarded throughout the industry. And this is the fourth or the fifth broadcast that we've had Paul on to talk about his books and about being a manager, being a leader in crisis times. In fact, the last show Paul Falcone and I did was just about 2 years ago. And I was writing this article about leadership and how is CHRO, how a leader is going to manage through all this craziness. The pandemic was just starting in big time. And you gave me a quote, I don't remember right now, but it was like, these are the times that are going to make or break people and companies, because we're going to be faced with tremendous challenges of communications. People are going to lose their jobs. They're going to walk away because of not being able to communicate, not being able to be in the office, not to be able to be seen. And you were right on target before anybody else that I spoke to about that. Paul Falcone, welcome.
Good to know that, Ed. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. So you've been really busy, and Harper Collins Leadership keeps giving you all these accolades and leadership roles, and the books keep selling. It's terrific. What's your secret, Paul?
Yeah, they keep giving me assignments, Ed, but you know what? It's a good place to be if you're a writer. To me, the secret is simple. Just focus on the how. My books have always been about how to do things. And, it's one thing to say, oh, you need to motivate people, or you need to hold your people accountable. And managers are like, yeah, I agree. I just don't quite know how to do it. So my books have been on scripts. My books have been on sample documents. When you give people things that can help them facilitate their jobs on a day-to-day basis, they appreciate it. And there's a big gap out there. Even if you have an MBA from a top 10 school, they don't teach this. They're not teaching leadership in the trenches. They're not teaching the communication piece. So that's always, I think, where my books have found a little bit of a niche.
So now here we are. We're going to review some of the pandemic era and all that. But you have a new series coming out soon, and it's the Paul Falcone Workplace Leadership Series of 5, right? 5 books?
5 books.
Do you want to hold one up or hold up the package?
Yeah. I just got these in the mail. It's so nice of you to ask me. I just got these in the mail today. So as an author, when you get a book series or just any book, it's like giving birth to a baby. It's like, here it is. Finally, you've been working on this for 2 years, and they just arrive at the doorstep like the stork brought it in. And I just saw it this morning. So happy to share it with you and your audience.
Yeah. What's the title of the first one there? I couldn't really see it.
It's called Workplace Ethics and Mastering Ethical Leadership and Sustaining a Moral Workplace.
So is this something new?
For me, yeah, because normally I write about the talent management cycle, from effective hiring and motivating and growing and coaching to disciplining and tough conversations, and performance management in general. I'd never written a book on ethics. And I've written articles on ethics, but even that was not many. And I just felt like that's where the need is today. There's so much craziness going on in the world. I think we need to kind of get back to basics. And this kind of book is meant to anchor everybody and hopefully teach them some tricks and make it really practical. It's not a lot of theory. It's really a matter of how ethics shows itself in the workplace.
Ethics meaning what? Don't sleep with your secretary? Or?
Well, I guess you could throw that in the category. I like that one. Really, it's about fairness, and it's about conduct, and it's about how to communicate to people in terms of setting your expectations the right way so they don't step on a landmine. And those are the kinds of issues. Managers are still confused about how to treat performance versus conduct in the workplace. And they don't realize that with conduct issues, they've got a lot more discretion. So if someone, I always tell them, listen, if someone engages in theft or embezzlement or forgery, you fire them, right? And they're like, well, yeah. And I said, yeah, but that's because it's a conduct issue. And so you can move from 0 to termination for a first offense like that, and they get it. But they don't realize that that applies also, for example, to gross insubordination or egregious sexual harassment. You can go 0 to term, you can go 0 to final written warning, that if they ever do it again, they're out the door. And the managers are like, well, I never realized that. I always thought you had to go through steps. And it's like, no, not with conduct. So you have to kind of build that muscle for managers. A lot of times they don't realize quite how much discretion they have or what their rights are. And this book was kind of meant to center them on that, make sure that they realize they've got a lot more at their fingertips than they sometimes realize.
So let's chat a little bit about current events. In other words, the Great Resignation, or people jumping ship because they think they can and they can get away with it. But what's your take on the other side? You know, being an executive on the people side.
Oh, it's so hard to find people right now. It's frustrating. It's, you know, to literally run job ads and do things and get 0 response. It's like, wait,
That's amazing.
Did it get posted? Did nobody respond to this thing really? And we're in healthcare. You know, Motion Picture and Television Fund is a healthcare nonprofit. We're basically a residential care facility for the elderly. And so we have, you know, skilled nursing and memory care and those types of things. And we service the needs of entertainment industry people, retirees. But we were also ground zero for COVID. You know, everyone associated COVID with retirement homes. So it was really tough, Ed. And now we're in a situation where, I mean, literally, it's like God rattled everyone's cage and said, this ain't a dress rehearsal. You better pay attention. And a lot of people have realized, I'm not doing what I did anymore. I don't care what I do, but it's not going to be a blank. And fill in the blank with waiter, a nursing assistant, you know, all these different kinds of jobs. People are realizing life is too short and they don't want to go back to where they were. So you can't, it's very hard to find qualified people. And of course, as an employer, you don't want to hire people who have 0 experience doing something. It's too risky. So employers are flat-footed right now. They don't know what to do to find people. And that's the quagmire we find ourselves in.
So before we get into the bad manager thing, but women are reported to have, they own this great quit because they are needed at home and because they think they can do something different and still stay at home.
Yeah, one of the topics I love to write on and teach on is women in leadership, because that's really, in a lot of ways, this country's strategic advantage that we have. It's not just the labor participation rate of females. It's the fact that there's more females coming out of medical schools, more females coming out of law schools than males. And the dynamics are changing very, very quickly. And it's a beautiful thing to see. But also women, because they are the primary caregivers for childcare, are in a situation where childcare is so incredibly expensive. I mean, you have to make a lot of money to justify being able to send your child to childcare. And then, of course, there was the risk that the child could get sick or COVID in childcare. So a lot of times you would see women be staying at home with their kids, which again sets their careers back somewhat. In that sense, it's difficult. On the other hand, this whole idea of a pandemic, let's face it, Ed, a pandemic is meant to thin out the human population. This is the first time in human history where we've had a vaccine that could fight against a pandemic. And interestingly enough, as human beings, half of us don't want to take it. So it's just such a scattergram out there. But the reality is, yes, women, I think, are feeling that they're taking the brunt of this in the sense of, I have to take care of my child first. And I can't let any job or any career considerations become more important than the health and safety of my child. So I think for that reason, we've seen a lot of female talent kind of evaporate before our very eyes. But I do think it's understandable.
So there is another author that I was speaking with recently who's writing a new book about harmony. His attitude isn't, and I'm not quoting him at all, these are my words, crash HR and move all the compliance stuff out of HR into VP operations, and that the HR leader, the people leader, be coach to help people reach their capabilities. And it sounds great to me. Is it practical?
Well, it sounds great to me too. And I think in human resources ranks, you're hearing people talking about, we want to become the department of yes. We're tired of becoming the department of no. And I get that. But the problem is there's so much liability associated with human beings and managing people that it typically falls to human resources. You can step on so many landmines so quickly. I mean, things like disability discrimination, that carries punitive damages. That's big. That's the new sexual harassment. And, if you're not engaging in the interactive process with employees the right way, trying to bring them back to work, trying to work around their work restrictions, you get sued big time for that. It's the HR department that's responsible for dealing with the employees with these leaves. So as much as I'd love to say, yeah, I'd like to take out the compliance and give it to the operations peeps, the reality is, as long as HR is quote unquote the people department, and we've got a very strong plaintiff bar in this country, it's probably going to have to stay with HR. I don't see how to disassociate the two.
Yeah. So the generalist, I don't know, it's not going to go away, but they're going to be specialists.
Well, the thought is you can still be a great leader despite all these laws. And the truth of the matter is every manager in corporate America has an HR hat. They all have to deal with these kinds of issues. And so the HR department hopefully is there to coach them if they're doing things the right way. But you have to find your way to find that balance. For example, there are times when someone isn't performing well, but they're protected under multiple categories, including they're on a current FMLA, intermittent leave, and we're engaging with them in the ADA interactive process, and they're pregnant, and they're, a lot of times companies are like, look, let's face it, we really probably, if all those things weren't on the table, we'd be moving through the progressive discipline and termination track, but we really just can't right now. You do have to figure out sometimes like when to pick your fight. There's not every hill is meant to be died on. If you're going to die on a hill, know which one to do it on, but don't necessarily put a red flag in front of a plaintiff attorney these days, because it could become a very expensive mistake.
One of the shows I did recently was with a woman by the name of Nadine Vogel, who's a friend, and from back east and now living in Florida. So she happened to have 2 daughters, I think, and both of them were born with some kind of disability, unfortunately. And so she was thrust into what to do. And so she made it a business and has done really well, forming a foundation and getting corporate understanding and backing. And
good for her. Boy, you talk about people who make a cause of one of those challenges and how much that's in need. Good for her. She's a hero.
And I'll get you guys connected, because she would be a very interesting person. Maybe I'll set up a talk show between the 3 of us.
That's right. Love it.
So she was on the last time about just before Christmas, I think. And the topic was menopause as the new disability. And there's so many women. This not a laughing matter, I know, but for many years we just don't talk about it. But now that there's more women in leader roles and doing very important things, if not in leader roles, it's real, and it does impact workplace happiness, production, or whatever. Sure. So she was telling me about this, and we were joking about things, of course, but I let her tell the jokes, not me.
Right. Smart. Good.
But anyway, the world is changing, the landscape and the issues. So is CHRO the new CEO?
No. Let's not get confused. We are one particular section of the orchestra. The CEO is still managing the entire orchestra. Okay. For me, in my world, I'm the trumpet section because I played all through college, but that's all. I don't pretend to be more than that. It is not it's not the operations job. I'm not finance, and I'm not IT, and I'm not sales. But what I will tell you is this, Ed, and the reason why I think you're asking the question, When I was growing up, and I've been 3 decades now in business, soft skills, yeah, that was great. That's a nice HR thing. Go back to your office, Paul. If I need anything, I'll call you. Okay. That's not where it's at anymore. Soft skills are the new set of tools. If you're talking about retaining people, you've got to become their favorite boss. You got to pierce their hearts. It is not enough to just people come in, do your work, and don't ask any questions. That culture is not going to sustain over time. And those are the challenges we're seeing. And it's been brought out by the fact that there's such labor scarcity. It's not just the great resignation, it's the gray resignation. It's baby boomers who, I'm with me too. I'm gray up there too. And I'm 58 years old. I was the very, very end. I was born in 63 and the baby boom ended in 64. But a lot of people like me are thinking, you know what? I don't know how much more time I'm going to have on the planet. Why aren't I enjoying what I'm doing more? And people are kind of coming to this realization. That's what COVID did. There are enough people who died from this or suffering from long COVID that you realize this is not a dress rehearsal. And people are kind of coming back to what's important to them. And again, that's not a bad thing. That's kind of a natural reaction to a massive, mega virus that the entire globe suffered from. But at the same time, it's destabilizing employers very, very quickly. And that's where the challenge comes in. Where do you find the people?
2 years ago, about March 1st, actually my last live conference was in Washington, D.C. on February 27, 2020. And it was on Embassy Row, and we were in the mansion. It was a house. It was former President Woodrow Wilson lived in this house, and is now a museum, historical. So they used to rent out space for meetings, and in the backyard, which was like an estate for weddings and whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we had an inside room, and we filled it. But that was the last live meeting that I produced.
Yeah, I can understand.
I'm getting ready, but I'm not ready yet. No. I'm actually gotten real used to sitting on my ass here doing this.
Well, okay. I didn't even know what Zoom was 2 years ago. And now it's like Zoom fatigue. But thank God that technology was the perfect technology at the right time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But you're right. It seems like a different world, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah.
To kind of think back before pandemic, I don't even remember what I don't remember. It's 2 years. It seems like 20.
Yeah. So I'm looking at notes here. You've been a long time participant in SHRM and Speakers Bureau in particular, mm-hmm. And you're a certified executive coach. And as we mentioned, the author of several books, including the Paul Falcone Workplace Leadership Series. I'm reading this. So what do you think of the people in your shoes who work at Netflix or at Paramount now? I know you used to work there, but it's a different world now.
Yeah, I think so. There's so much change going on. I mean, the studio system itself is much smaller than it had been. Now to make a hit movie, you can do it with an iPhone, and you don't need a big giant studio with all the brick and mortar. It's just different. And streaming is tending to put out so much more content all the time that there's a disadvantage to the bigger studios. So yes, they are still icons. They're very relevant still. I'm not saying they're not, but they are much smaller than they were back in the day, and people-wise at least. And it's just a changing business model. I think, Ed, the funny thing is there's so much change happening so quickly that accounts for a lot of the disruption we see in society. I mean, people are feeling very, very uncomfortable with this pace of change. And, they're going back to some instincts that are making them feel more comfortable, whatever that happens to be. But it is a difficult time. When we look back on this 100 years from now, I think the big theme is going to be, did we know how to really interpret information we were learning on the internet? Did we know how to read with a more critical eye? Did we believe too quickly without vetting the sources? But we don't have small town newspapers vetting anything anymore. Right now, it's a free-for-all. You and I could post anything we want on the internet, and if enough people believe it, I guess that's news, because there's no one to say it's not. And those are the challenges we find in the workplace. This hum of noise in the background, from the politics to the right now, the invasion in Ukraine, it unnerves people, and people can't leave that at the door. They are nervous coming to work too. And the level of anxiety, from what I can see and from what I hear from my peers, is very, very real. How do you calm the room? It's not the easiest thing to do. You try, but it's not easy.
So let's talk about people today. Let's try to take what you just said and go to the next level by looking back at how people reacted to each other. People who came to an office, got coffee. First of all, they commuted an hour or 2 hours, and then
Don't forget that.
got coffee, had walk-by meetings and catching up on something, and then finally you're at the desk, and then, oh my God, now I got all these responsibilities and this and that, and I've got a meeting here and a meeting there. And when people work from home, work from a remote situation, they don't have any of those disruptions. Of course, it's more self-management and more agility to get things accomplished. So the new skills is what you referred to just a minute ago. How to deal with different people, how to deal with people who are different. And people who do this on Zoom, remote, I think I'm more agile. I know that I've become more agile because I can deal with people from India and Sri Lanka and Dubai and Beirut. I've never had that opportunity before.
I totally agree. Again, Zoom to the rescue, or whichever platform you're using. I've done presentations now in Vietnam, in Bahrain. They said, Paul, we could never get American speakers to come because it's too expensive, it's too far, it's not in our budget. But would you mind doing a presentation? And my answer is, of course. I would be honored. I would love to. Who wouldn't want to do that? And so, yeah, I think you're right, Ed. We are stronger for this. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but we are building a whole new set of muscles. And again, managers have to be more purposeful. They have to be more deliberate. It doesn't come as easy as walking up and down the hallway and seeing your friends over a cup of coffee at the water cooler. We don't have that luxury anymore, but you still have to know to connect your people. And you still have to know to make it safe for people to feel connected. And what are the ways you do that? Those are all, believe it or not, those are ethical issues too, because ethics is about fairness and how you treat people. How do you create that environment where you can make space for people to feel comfortable, to feel like they make a difference, to feel like even though they're out of sight, technically speaking, physically, they're not out of mind. And those are all real considerations for today. It's not an easy time. That expression of we're building the plane while we're flying it very much applies to right now because we have no paradigm to build from. This is all being created as we speak, which is again, a point of pure creation. That's really where we are right now.
One of your earlier books that was a big seller and still is entitled 101 Tough Conversations to Have with Employees. But that was like 10 years ago or more. And so is it still relevant today? Just keeping in mind there's new questions.
Yeah, it is, because you still have to have those kinds of conversations. In the newer edition that came out, we had to talk about remote relationships and remote tough conversations because that's the new demand these days. But if anything, there has to be more conversation. When I say tough conversations, I mean tough topics. It doesn't mean that people are yelling and screaming at each other. It's like, how do you handle this the right way that's supportive and constructive, but still gets things done? People still need to be held accountable, whether they're working remotely or whether they're working in the office. You still have to manage, and you're hopefully getting the most out of your people every day by wanting them to give the highest level of productive performance and individual discretion and effort. But no, the conversations are more important now than they have been in the past, because like I say, you don't have the informal stop by my office and we'll grab a cup of coffee. This has to be a phone call or a Zoom call or something along those lines when there's a difficult issue going on and it needs to be addressed.
So one of the other books, 96 great interview questions. So we started off this program a little bit ago by you commenting that how come the phone's not ringing? How come we're not getting resumes? So
Mhm.
are there new interview questions or new other questions saying, how do we get this talent in the door?
Yeah. Okay. So interesting. Yeah, I would say yes, there are. So here's a scoop. Historically, for me growing up in the last 3 decades, the paradigm went something like this: Paul, what can you do for us if we hire you? Okay. And that was basically all it was. The candidate had to present him or herself to the company, convinced that I'm the right person, and then hope to get hired. Now it goes both ways. What I'm training managers to do is what I call emotionally intelligent interviewing. Okay. Talk to candidates about their careers. Talk to them about why would this job help you in terms of building your LinkedIn profile and building your resume? Or if you were to accept this position with us right now, how would you explain it to a prospective employer 3 to 5 years from now? Like, why would this job make sense in terms of being a good link in your career progression? If you're asking those kinds of questions, you are meeting one of the big five needs of the Gen Y and the Gen Z, the 35 and under and the 25 under and crowd. What they want is professional and career development. That's one of their big asks. It's a reasonable ask, but start it in the pre-employment stage. Start it when they're just coming in. They're going to sit there and say, Ed, I normally don't say this in an interview, but okay, as soon as they do that, Ed, you've got them. They're being real. They're making themselves vulnerable in a healthy sense. And all else being equal, if they have to choose between 2 or 3 companies, it's like, no, I want to work for Ed because he was the one who was really interested in me. It wasn't just what I can do for them, but they wanted to make sure that this was good for me and my career progression. And I really appreciated that. That's kind of the thinking that needs to go into, hiring people and interviewing people. It's a selfless leadership type of concept, but people will be magnetized towards it because it shows you care about them. It's not just about what they can do for you.
So Gen Z, they have college debt, and they're more likely to be single at the moment. So they want to be relocated. That they don't necessarily want to go to Eastern Europe now, but they want to go someplace.
Right.
And
Right.
so how would you handle that? If I can just zing you with that for a second here. I mean, would you say, well, I think there's opportunities there, but I have to investigate for it and blah, blah, blah.
That's a good zinger question. I like it. So wait, I have a question. Are you saying that we've got an operation elsewhere where they want to go and they want me to pay for their move? Or are you saying they want to live in Alaska and just because they want to live in Alaska and they want me to send them there? Which one?
Aha, that's a good one. What
See?
about Aruba?
Touche. Or Aruba. We'll give you Aruba too. The reality, I think on a practical basis, Ed, if we've got an operation somewhere that has an opening and we have a need, it's typically, depending on the level, you're usually seeing this more among senior executives. They're not really moving along people that are at the analyst level, but you never know. The point is, if someone does want to go there, you might be able to work out something where we can pay for certain things, but you'll cover certain things because you wanted to move there anyway. And that could be a great hire, especially with people doing quasi, hybrid roles, sometimes in person, sometimes at home. But no, if someone said to me they want to move to Aruba, for me to hire them, I got to get them to Aruba. The answer is have a good day. From a practical standpoint, I am not in the relocation business and you've come to the wrong place. And that's not just because I work in a nonprofit now. I've worked at Paramount, I've worked at Nickelodeon, I've done City of Hope, I've done biotech, I've done private equity. No one would be doing that kind of stuff. So I think you've got an entitlement mentality waiting to explode on your hands. I'd probably not recommend that hire.
All right, cool. Okay, so where do you go from here with your 5 new books?
That's nice of you. Yeah, thanks for asking that. The 5 new books are meant to be a talent management suite. If you can, my thought had always been this: like I say, they don't teach in business school the in the trenches leadership. And if you can kind of put together a suite that follows the whole life cycle, from how do you hire them to how do you motivate them, retain them, develop them, and coach them, how do you have the tough conversations and document when you need to structure progressive discipline that's going to result in a clean termination, and wrap it all in ethics so that people understand, like, the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, what are my responsibilities, and how do I hold people accountable in a fair and equitable way. That's what this is meant to be. And if it hits, I will be a very, very happy man. But again, It's brand new. This is fresh off the press. You can still smell the ink, and we'll see. Like every book that comes out, you know, as an author, you hope that it gets some traction out there, and I hope this one does. But that's what it was intended and designed to do.
So it sounds like you need to go on a speaking tour to set it up, and
Aruba.
I offer my Zoom studio here to have you come and do a training on this, and then a training on that, and you know,
That's
how
great.
about somebody wants to work for me here? I don't know. I'm sorry. So I welcome you to come back and tell us how things are going for you.
Thanks. I love doing this podcast. You've invited me several times. I've always been very, very honored, and it's just a pleasure to see you and catch up. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, and stay healthy.
Will do. You too.
That's Paul Falcone in LA, and I'm here in San Diego, and happy weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.